So, um, but I guess like the start of it. So the start of the race goes from like Palisade Ski Resort, formerly known as Squaw. I think you've skied there, Mo. Uh, and you run from like the bottom of the ski resort all the way to the top of the mountain. So the whole crew started hiking up there at like 3:30 or 4 in the morning. And I just like sat at the start or sat in the car, grabbed a coffee. I saw Courtney Dauwalter as I was walking back to the car. She was there with her mom, looking very cold. I was going to say hi, but then I was like, everybody gets pre-race jitters. Just leave people alone. But
She's the one that won.
yeah. Um, so um, so hung out in the car for a bit, and then
How did you feel the morning of? Like, obviously, we weren't trying to jinx you or anything, but like, did you like, was like dinner sitting well? Like, did you feel rested? Did you? I mean, I'm sure you felt nervous, but like, how did you feel compared to like a Pikes Peak marathon?
I felt way better than like the day before. I was feeling quite bad. I had a headache all day. And so I just like couldn't really shake it. And had it when I was going to bed and everything. But then I went to bed early enough, got, 5 hours of sleep and didn't have that much trouble sleeping, and felt like pretty good. Like felt full and nervous, but overall good. Andrew, your poem, ChatGPT aided poem, was just perfect.
Good. Maybe you can give us a rendition of it here.
Oh man. Well, I think Melissa got a little bit of it recorded, but it was just very heroic. Um, so it's fun. But so yeah, I was feeling like, I don't know, just like not that, like in a good state in the morning. Nervous, went and grabbed a coffee and sat in the car with it. And then went to the start line with like 10 minutes to go, 5 minutes to go, maybe. And they fired a shotgun at the start, which was fun. And so fired a shotgun, and then we all started. And one thing that I actually was thinking at the time was Western States does not like register your time based on chip time. So I wasn't like, elbowing to get to the front, but I did think about that. I was like, oh, I guess I start my watch now. So I ran a little bit further than all of the leaders who were on the start line, and I'd like that to be known.
So do they do timing by manually writing down your bib number at every aid station and entering it into an Excel sheet or something?
I think it's all just based on like time of day. There definitely is like their timing mat registers when you come over, but it's like time of day linked rather than like reference from when you stepped across the start line.
I see. So your bib gets registered. It has an RFID thing.
Yep. Which actually that is like such a bummer for like some of those people that just missed golden hour. We didn't have people missing by like 20 seconds this year, but like that's maybe the difference for some people.
That's a good point. Yeah, Ash. If you haven't watched Ash miss it by like 2 minutes at the end, yeah, he may have gotten it had he been up there elbowing with the fasties.
Right. So just started running. It's all dark at that point, but no headlamp needed. And not running very much because like everybody's jokes about like the first person to the top of the escarpment, is never one. It's not the time to go fast.
Dude, he got dropped hard.
I did. Well,
no, not you. The guy who was leading.
Oh yeah,
He DNF'd.
I don't know what happened to him, because I was going through aid stations, and I'd ask like who is leading, and everybody would be like, oh, some Chinese guy, but we don't know his name. And I thought it was the
insight from the master of timing. What happened to that guy?
Yeah.
You're on mute.
I didn't track him after the beginning. I was just concentrating on Caleb's group and things, but it was June somebody.
Yeah.
Nice. Okay.
It was funny though. He just seemed to be like way ahead of everybody, and then he just totally crashed and burned. So I don't know what the strategy was there. He was just really excited to run in the snow and not anything else, and brought some skis. I don't know.
We saw him drop out at Michigan Bluff, and he looked like he was in rough shape and not having a good day. So
how far at that point? Like how far behind him was I?
Not much. I
Okay.
mean, like we were at Michigan Bluff waiting for you for maybe an hour, maybe 90 minutes. But so like I would say maximum an hour. Yeah,
Wow.
he was not looking great. And similarly, Camille Herron was also looking pretty terrible. And she was like
Oh,
in a lawn chair, like passed out.
well,
So
well
people are having a hard
Camille
time.
is kind of an interesting story. So basically, I'll tell her story in a sec. But I got to the top, like you run. I mean, I was mostly just trying to go slow and keep it calm and everything like that, going up, and just felt great to actually be running or walking instead of waiting for Western States. And then going up the escarpment, it gets snowier and snowier. And then at the top, as you've seen some photos of, it was like all snow. It was honestly going to the top of the escarpment was like maybe my highlight of the race, um, which was just so fun. It was like there was just like a tunnel of screaming people. Alden Shepherd and Hudson were screaming so loud, and it was just like incredibly fun going up there. So that was like, and the sun is rising, and yeah, just so fun. So everybody said like that was a special moment, and I was like, I'm blown away. I was like going through the tunnel, and like somebody stuck like a box of donuts in my face, and I was just like so overwhelmed that I just like grabbed a quarter of a donut and ate it. Like I didn't.
I
So that
do,
was
I do
awesome.
want to point out that that was your only sunrise to experience.
I know. I was really happy. So uh so got up there. I dropped my jacket with Melissa because it felt like it was going to be warm enough that I wouldn't need it, and kept my gloves, and that ended up being perfect. Then it's fun because you crest the escarpment, and like when you're skiing there, you oftentimes like see all the like this area is closed. You get fines if you ski back here, kind of a thing. And it's cool that you're just like, okay, I just like drop off the back, and um, then you're kind of in the new area. And I'd run the like mile 30 through 100 before, so this 30-mile stretch was entirely new for me, and so that was exciting. So dropped off there, and then there's like some dirt, but it basically was like snow from then until 15 miles, just constant. But the snow was pretty firm, so you weren't like sinking into it, but um pretty slippery. So like there were times when I was like thinking like this is like a mix of golf and running, because you'd be like, okay, I angle up there and then I'll curve around to go where I need to go. Uh or they had like sort of like pink markings on the ground to show where you should go, or pink flags. But I'd end up getting like if I were like leading a train or in between trains of people, it was like really tough to find where you were going and very like spot the next flag. Um, there was a lot of like areas where people would like slide down on their butts, or I would like slide down skiing on my feet, or um, all those kinds of things. So it was kind of crazy to see that.
Did you
And
make any wrong turns?
I did, but I generally get back on track pretty quickly. There was a stretch probably for like 2 or 3 miles between when I was sort of in between packs running on my own. And that one, yeah, you just like, oh, too far and come back or loop around a little bit. Um, or sometimes like there's one thing where like we're still crossing like rivers and stuff too, like or small creeks. But like huge overhanging ice ledges over it, and so like there's like this big like pink X's like don't go here, go around, and then you'd like slide down, jump over the creek and get to the other side. So it was definitely funky there. But with Camille Herron, so it was probably around 4 miles, 5 mile, no, more than four, like probably 5 or 6 were running, and Camille Herron had set the world record for the track for like 50 miles, 100 miles, 24 hours, 48 hours. It's like a really fit long distance track runner. But she was running and I was running, and I saw this person that was just sort of like climbing out of like hell kind of a thing, where you're just like hands and knees, like kind of wailing, like crawling up, trying to get back to the trail, and not like in the level where it was like, I feel bad because I didn't stop for the person, but that was Camille Herron. Like she was like really in a rough state. And I didn't realize it was Camille until somebody else mentioned it. And I was like, oh wow. So she had a hard time.
Were there any parts on the snow that felt sketchy or unsafe?
I think a lot of other people were really affected by it and like were like, I felt like I didn't waste very much energy. Definitely felt like I could hurt myself, but it was like, I don't know, everybody fell a lot. But it was just like you're falling on snow. But I never, yeah, I think that's why people would slide down on their butts on those sections. But it was okay. And then there were some areas where you really had to like climb up, and they kind of cut stairs in a few of those. So it never felt too unsafe or anything to me. But certainly higher injury risk or something like that. Hi, Daiso. So cute. So yeah, just ran through there and got the first aid station was at mile 10. And I got there, felt pretty good, still just kind of calm, and then ran along there, and then I'm forgetting exactly when. I think the next aid station was like maybe 5 more miles or something after that. So that was after 15, the snow became like a little bit more patchy. But then it got really smoky to the level where it was like not probably as bad as Alden in Chicago, but it's definitely like real hazy to look at and smoky smelling. I'm glad that it didn't last for very long, but that was from the controlled burn that was happening. And when you're up on like that top ridge, but very pretty back there, and like you're running on a ridge and see all the mountains on the side, and so that was great. But I guess like the next big milestone was Robinson Flat, and Robinson Flat coming into that, it got snow, or I guess before that you like did a really fun river crossing in Duncan Canyon, I think. And there they strung up a rope, and the water was like about waist deep. And it was starting to get a little hot, and so it was just like really fun to cross the river. It was like holding onto a rope, and you're like trying to like don't really have no footing or anything like that, and it was a really fun, pretty area too. And there was no volunteers there, so it was like surprising there were so many volunteers in the race, but if you kind of messed up the river crossing, you were on your own. But across that, yeah.
At what point did it start feeling pretty hot and you were like wanting more water? Because it seems like throughout the day, a lot of the top people were like drenched in water. So when did you start doing that? Or did you?
So the advice that I gotten before the race for like a hot year was to start icing at mile 15. It didn't feel hot enough to do that yet. And so I think I put my ice bandana on with no ice a little before Duncan Canyon. So I wasn't at an aid station yet, but I was just thankful, like I brought the perfect thing. So I was really happy I had that jacket for the beginning, and then I'm really happy I took it off because I didn't need it. And then I had my ice bandana in my backpack, which I'm really thankful for. Yeah, so I just had everything that I actually needed, because getting to Robinson Flat, it was something where the buses ended up, you guys can tell that story, ended up being like a 2-hour wait. So I got there and I was really excited because like the escarpment was like so high energy and so fun that I was like really just excited to see everybody again, because I was like, it was just going to be like, I don't know, at this point it's been 6.5 hours. Yeah, so I was just like really excited to see everybody, and then I made it through, or there I came up on it, and it was cool because you've like seen all the videos of people approaching Robinson Flat, like, whoa, I'm here in the race, this is awesome. It was like a lot of people, and then I was looking around for you guys and I didn't see you, and then I saw that Sharon lady, and she said hi, and then I asked like if she'd seen the crew. So then I went to the end of the aid station, didn't see you guys. Walked back looking around, and the guy was like, "You looking for your crew?" And they announced like crew for 308. And then Sharon said like the buses were running late, and so I was like, there's nothing I need. So just get going. So I had like a bunch of quesadillas and scarfed a bunch of potatoes. I was eating a bunch of potatoes at this point. And just kind of set off from there. But anything else to add about the bus situation? It sounded bad, and I know Melissa ran towards it with the back.
Yeah, I want to just, I just feel so, I mean, I feel we all didn't have the best time there, but I feel really bad for Melissa. There's just a lot of decisions with like unknowns involved where it was like, if we do this, there could be a chance that the group that like hitchhikes up makes it later than the group that like gets the bus. And so it was just like a bunch of unknowns and like all the decisions. And so we ended up making most of the right decisions, but just not with enough time to spare. But like 2.5 hours from like the parking lot to the aid station.
Oh man,
Which was
and
crazy.
yeah, I don't know.
But Melissa, ended up hitchhiking up with a group of guys that got a closer parking spot. They were stopped, not allowed to drive up to the aid station, even though she told the people that she had a runner coming through. And then she just took off on a dead sprint with a North Face duffel on her back up a hill at altitude. This is like a mere 6 hours before her pacing marathon that she went on.
Plus, it's like 5 hours after or 6 hours after early wake up, and then going 7 miles up and down a mountain.
Yeah, totally. And this is like pretty, I know you were exposed to it the whole time, but this is like full heat of the day. And I think she missed you by like not even 5 minutes.
Yeah, very, very few.
Yeah.
But
Anyway,
I will say,
glad you weren't like held up too much.
yeah, I'm glad I didn't get held up. And I will say, I do think that missing you guys at that aid station might have saved my whole race. Because I got new shoes for the snow, these Hoka Mafates, and they have like really burly tread. And I was certain that the stretch between 30 and 55, the next time I'd see the crew, is the canyons. And so the canyons have these pretty technical descents. And so I was going to switch into more dexterous shoes. But my feet had swelled a moderate amount at that point. And those shoes were all just like more minimal and harder. And I really think I would have had a whole lot more foot problems if I had switched there, which I was totally planning to do. And so the only reason I didn't switch is because you guys weren't there. And I really think that made a big difference. So it all worked out very well. But yeah, it was a little bit of a bummer. When I was running away, I was like mostly just a little bit concerned that you guys were like not like in a car accident or something like that, but mostly just keep running. I did have my phone, sent you guys a text, you guys got a message eventually. But I did hear that the buses were late, so I was kind of thinking that was the mode. But from Robinson Flat for maybe like 5 or 6 miles, it's like this just fire road. It's not super fun. It doesn't feel like you're going very fast. You've been running for 7 hours and have a lot to go. And so I honestly just started feeling like sad there a little bit bored. I was like bummed to not see the crew a little bit, but also totally understood. But it was just like not a fun part of the trail, even though it's an easy part of the trail. It's like they call it kind of like the half marathon after there. It's kind of light downhill. And so by the time I got to this aid station called Last Chance, at 43 miles, I was just like really sad. And like when Paul and I first started running together, doing long runs, I remember saying like, Paul, I just like don't want to stop, and I don't want to keep going. I just want to cry. And I totally was feeling that as I was coming into Last Chance aid station. So I was like, the aid stations are giving me like so much energy. I hope I can just like soak up energy there and be okay. But you're also at mile 43, and it's like 8.5 hours in, and you're like, I'm in the best case going to be doing this for 16 more hours. And like it also like I think it's just also just tired, like fatigued, like of mentally at that point a little bit, more than physically even. So I get into the aid station. I started having stomach problems a little bit before there, but just like light nausea. And so I went to the porta potty.
Quick question before we jump into this.
Yeah.
At this point in the race, where do you have an accurate idea of like where your pacing is? Like, do you know if you're behind or ahead, or is that like a mental construct that you had like started thinking about yet?
I had some splits on my phone and I knew I was quite far behind. I thought I was like 40 minutes behind at that point, but I just
Okay.
knew that like the canyons were going to be cool. And so I was going to make up a lot of time there. But I knew that I was behind, but not panicking about it or anything like that.
But were you behind there?
I think others would know better than I do. I think I was behind.
It didn't seem like it. We were
I think-
watching you, and it seemed like at one point you were maybe like 10 or 15 minutes back, but you were always like right within those time. I was using the Western States published time limits, not the ones you came up with, and you were always right around them. So very
That's
Yeah,
good.
Daddy has a comment on it too. I think that he had a
Yeah,
better.
after the second aid station, you were behind by 17 minutes, which equated to like 22% behind your planned pacing. But the three women that I was tracking that all finished in the top 10, they were behind by like 24% from last year. So then I knew it wasn't a Caleb performance thing. It was strictly a terrain, snow, can't get up this escarpment very easily. And then he started tracking with the predicted times, but it was good to measure it against relative performance against those three women.
That is really cool. I truly, I forget the exact times. I thought I was 40 minutes behind or something at some point. And probably last chance, but I wasn't really paying too much attention to any of it. Because I knew I was just running roughly right. I was monitoring my heart rate a lot and just going by feel. But that aid station, I was like, okay, I'm gonna just like, I need like a pep talk from an aid station person. I think I had a change of socks there. So I changed my socks. And then I felt a little bit better, but I also was feeling pretty nauseous. Like I had one potato and I couldn't eat. And then I start running away from the aid station and there's all these signs for people that are like, set up after the aid station. And, you've got ones for a lot of different people and fun people that I'd like recognized or whatever. And then I saw Caleb Cruz, be patient, be humble, and get that silver buckle. And honestly, seeing that, I think I was just like really missing the crew and I like totally cried. And I felt so much better after it. I was just like got all the sad out and I felt totally fine. I started like getting away from there and like the guy that checking me out making sure you didn't make a wrong turn was like, you got 4 miles of the most beautiful single track in California coming up. And I was like, I do. And so I just like started running down there and it just felt so much better. So it's still like something where I knew I had a long way to go, but that was a really cool moment. And the way that sign got there, I actually learned this at the climb up to Michigan or to Forest Hill was there's this guy in the Bay Area, Oscar Mayorada, and he just like is just a jolly guy. And he had like reached out to Melissa and other runners that he knows. He makes like 40 signs for runners that he knows or people that he knows and then sends them to that aid station. So just awesome. Like there's just like this whole community around that was really cool. But yeah, then I headed into the canyons. The canyons are like notorious for being quite hot and hard. They're like 1,800-foot climbs with steep descents going into them. So it's like a full incline at like 50 miles or 40 miles. That felt pretty insulting in a way, but ice bandana, like Omi, you made one, but also Paul made me one, and I used Paul's for the race because I just had it in my bag. It was perfect. It just like held water with like a little chamois in there. It didn't irritate me at all. It was just like so good. And kept me cool, and it was a cool day. I never felt hot. And I went a little hard on the first canyon's ascent. And so I had cooked myself on that in training runs a couple of years ago. And I was very conscientious to not let my heart rate go like above 145. And I kept it at like 141, but it was definitely like too much output for my muscles at that point. And so by the time I got to the top or close to the top, I was feeling pretty bad. And like, again, it's like worried that I was going to throw up. And then also didn't feel good. And so the only time in the whole race that I just like sat down in the middle of the trail was there. I just sat on a rock and I told myself I'm going to sit for 1 minute. And I looked at my watch and I sat for 1 minute, and then I kept walking up the hill. And that's a part called Devil's Thumb. We went to the aid station there. And at that point was maybe the point where I was like most or least certain that I would finish the race. I was like, ooh, we might really have to drop out here or at some point, because at that point it's 48 miles or something like that. And so you have so much to go. And I did not feel good. So I sat on a chair for a while, for a relative while. It might have been one of my longer aid stations, definitely without crew. I had a little bit of ginger ale. And then I just eventually just kind of got up and started going again. And then started feeling a little better on the descent. And then on the climb up to Michigan Bluff, I just told myself, like, I can take this climb as easy as possible. Like, I just need to move, but like tiny walking steps even. And then it was still a very hard climb. It's still 1,800 feet is so hard at that point. And then I came into Michigan Bluff, and there was a big balloon arch. And then I turned the corner, and Ren and Sarah and Shepard, Alden, and Hudson were all there. And I was still in that mode of like a little scared about like completing the race, and kind of precarious. And so seeing them, they just like did perfect job. Like, I think Ren, you really were like, just had a lot of the like knowledge of being there before. That was really helpful. And it kind of like, I didn't feel like coming out of the aid station, I didn't feel like I got this, but I was kind of just like, got food again, got like care again. I changed my shirt, I changed my shoes, all that. And so, yeah, it just kind of like got me going again. And
Is that the aid station where you felt the worst coming in, or was it the one before that, do you think?
probably
Or
Devil's Thumb
probably-
was the worst. But then Michigan Bluff was just like, it started dawning on me. I tried to not think about it, but just how much further I had ahead of me. It was so long. So went there and then went left, and it's kind of a hard segment between Michigan Bluff and Forest Hill. You do one more small canyon.
So, quick question, Caleb. At Michigan Bluff, like, what were the primary challenges you were facing? You were definitely nauseous. It seemed like there was low morale, but like, how tired were your legs? Did you have joint pain? Did you have a headache? Like, what were your ailments at that point?
I think it was just sort of like low morale. And then I was starting to like fall behind on eating. And so and that's kind of like a spiral. And so you guys got me soup broth, and that was the first time I had soup broth, and that was good. I got the Morton drink, and that's really good. That Morton drink, I'm okay if it's a placebo. It brings me back. It's hard to mix, but great stuff. And so I felt like I kind of just like got back on top of myself again there, but I coming in was just probably low on food, really was probably the biggest issue. And then of course I was tired, but I didn't really know how tired yet.
From my perspective, seeing you at Michigan Bluff, I thought you were in big trouble. Like, it seemed like you were right at the edge of spiraling and letting your stomach like take control of the race from you in a bad way. And I was like, man, I think he's gonna like really struggle to get to Forest Hill and is gonna be in a bad spot. And you came in and you look great. So
I was-
something happened, but it was a great turnaround. Amazing.
You guys got me fixed up and ready to roll. That and the Morton drink. But sadly, I was wearing a glucose monitor as well, and I never had any interesting blood glucose for the whole race. My pancreas just works. So the but yeah, so I came out of there and I was nervous about it because the climb up from Michigan Bluff, there's this like kind of really exposed, burned climb. And it was really hard in training runs. I just like met a guy from South Carolina who I had met earlier during the snow, and we were moving a little bit together and walking, and so but it worked out okay. Like started descending and it was okay.
What was your competitors? Did you pretty much stay in the same place, or did you see some people fall back and other people pass? Because your numbers were consistent as far as your placing.
I think I started really like recognizing the majority of people past 55. It was like, oh, you're the guy that was throwing up going up Michigan Bluff. Nice comeback, you know. You're Dimmy from Russia, you know. He's back.
You also got to tell them about the lady that was like just breathing down your neck the whole time for like
Oh.
miles around Melissa or something.
There was this woman who coming out of Robinson Flat when I was feeling a little bit down, who just for like 10 miles was like 200 feet behind me, so quite far behind me. It's not like we were running together, and she just was every like 12 seconds would just go it was getting so annoying. I would like look behind, like, what is this? Like just clearing her throat every 8 to 10 seconds, I guess. And we ended up encountering each other at mile 93 or so. Again, when her headlamp ran out of batteries and she had no other one. So it gave her ours and Melissa got it back, thankfully. But yeah, came into Forest Hill. Forest Hill, I thought was going to be like really jubilant because it is such a cool aid station. But I think that Forest Hill for me like started a little bit of a transition where like I was keenly aware of everything that was happening around me, but I also was like not. I started to like, I never wanted to just like shut down my brain, and I do like still think about that. Like, can you have a lot of fortitude without like blocking out the world, sort of a thing. But I think at Forest Hill is when like I think I just got sufficiently tired that I recognized everything around, but it like gets a little bit duller. But coming into Forest Hill was fun. Saw Scotty and Brittany, they ran alongside. And then so that was fun that they came out, and then got to the aid station, changed shoes again. I had changed the Solomons and realized these are so hard, and changed back to the Hokas. Ate a little bit more food, got a little Morton drink, and then I headed off with Paul, and Paul and I started running, and Paul like was really awesome with like saying like my like he kind of like set me up. He's like, okay, for this section we need to just maintain like 15-minute miles between each of the aid stations or something like that. Excited to see. Oh, there's Montezuma's Revenge. I was curious who it was. So he did a great job of like kind of setting me up with what I needed to do. But at this point, like based on my splits and all that, like I still didn't believe that I was on track for 24 hours yet. I thought I was still like not making enough progress there. Not worrying about it yet, but just kind of like a little bit more like not motivated by being ahead or anything like that. And so we started running and it was good, and it was like sun was started to set and it was really pretty and it was good. And then I started to have like a low patch again where I was just like, I think I told Paul, I was just like, it's just so far. Like at this point, I think it was probably 14 hours into the race, 15 hours into the race. And it was just kind of like, if everything goes right, I have to run for 9 hours. Like, that's so long. And I was trying to not think about it, but it was just, that was getting down. And then I think I probably just had more food and I started feeling great. Or not, yeah, I had this section with Paul where I just was feeling amazing. And Paul would tell me that I was amazing like at least once a minute. And so I was like, I am amazing.
Hey, Caleb, just so the group knows, as I said, after the escarpment, you were 17 minutes off of your own targeted kind of 23 pacing. But in the next aid stations, you peaked at being only made up 11 or 12 minutes, and then at the end of the race finished 8 minutes. So does that make sense? 17 minutes after 2 aid stations, and then until mile 100, you went down to 6 and to 8. So it was all stronger than your pace charts, but kind of right on to.
Did I have, when are you saying, did I have like, when was I most ahead of 24-hour pace?
I'll check my sheet, but like about 60 miles, I think.
Okay, interesting, nice.
And Paul was right. You made up time. It was very difficult section, but you did so much better than everybody else, even though you felt like you were going slow.
I just felt amazing. I forget, Paul, whether it was like between Cal 1 and Cal 2 or something. At some point, I just like felt great.
Yeah, I was keeping an eye on it because there are a bunch of different pace charts. Your performance tracked the Western States published pace chart exceptionally well. So that's what I had. But you left Forest Hill 2 minutes to the good. And you were mentioning that you were like tired, and you were steadily beating the pace by about a minute a mile. And I wasn't really saying anything. But then we were rolling into Cal 2, and you're like, Paul, I have no motivation. And I was like, Caleb, you just made up 15 minutes in the last 10 miles. So like, I think you're good. And then you're like, wow, that's kind of motivating.
Yeah, it was really encouraging to hear that. And rolling into Cal 2 is when we started. Cal 2 is probably 70 miles, 72, something like that, 75, I don't know. And
70.7.
nice. Somebody had told me before the race that if you put on your headlamp at Cal 2, then you're on track to beat 24. And so I was a little bit hesitant to put on my headlamp before Cal 2, but I did put it on a little bit before. But Cal 2 was a really fun aid station. There was it was like started to be dark, and so started running in the dark. And I was excited for that run. You kind of made me excited for it, talking about it being a different experience, and it was really nice. It helped just not focus on the full distance to go, but just running at the moment. And so that was a fun aid station. It was like a big party and lights and everything. And so came out of there, and then knew
I'm
that
gonna interrupt real quick, not to make this about me, but I got my big softball game coming up.
go get them.
Keep chatting as long as you want. I got a list of questions that I was gonna ask you at the end, so I'm gonna drop them in the comments. If you have time, or you might have answered them already, but I'll just drop them in there. But yeah, keep going. Rachel will turn off the call when we're done, but thanks for doing this. This is really fun to hear from your perspective.
You're awesome too.
right.
And also everybody feel free to drop. You don't have to stay on for too long. Won't describe the race in too much detail beyond this, but go get them, Cameron.
Hey, Caleb, can you describe why they're called Cal Street?
No idea. I've never known, and they're not very like clear to me about why the aid, like the sections of them or anything like that. So I don't know.
Okay.
They also have other names like Peachstone, Dardanelles, and something else. And I don't know if one is the older name and one is the newer name. I don't know.
Okay.
But got out of there, knew that I just had from that point, I think it was like 5 miles to get to Rocky Chucky. And that was a big new milestone. And so came in, just I felt like the section with Paul, my goal was that for that section I'd be able to run the downhills and maybe the flats. And I was like, running the downhills and the flats, and it felt like 8-minute miles, but probably was 11-minute miles. And it was great. Like it was really good. And so came into Rucky Chucky, and Rucky Chucky was like a crazy scene. It kind of felt like a military operation where there were like lights and boats and like life jackets on the other side and like people scrambling up the bushes, and it just like felt really interesting to see. Came in, saw Melissa for the first time since the escarpments. It was a while. So that was fun. And everybody just like got me kitted out there. Like again, a good stop, change the socks, eat some things, get going again. And we hopped in the boat, had a little boat ride across Rucky Chucky, and so that was really fun. Oh, on boats, it was I don't know how many runners they would put in a boat, but you basically walked up and they were like, turn around, we'll put the life jacket on you. They were not going to trust a tired runner to put a life jacket on themselves. Put a life jacket on us, hopped in the boat. There were a couple boats running people back and forth or going across the river. Very quick boat ride, but it was fun. And then hopped off on the other side on this like sandy embankment, and then climbed up the sandy bit. And I didn't wait for a boat at all.
One comment on this, Cameron
Yeah.
had been racing back from the wedding and was again waiting like a half hour for a shuttle to pick him up. And I think literally as Caleb got out of the boat on the far side of the river, Cameron showed up and was like, "Where's Caleb?" Like, you just missed him. So poor Cameron really had a run around with the
Once again, though, just like you guys did such a good job on the crew side, like I think like just having everything, you did such a good job of like laying it out. And so it was like really easy for me to like see everything and like pick from it or get it. Because it was just like so, it wasn't like I had to think about something. Or Paul, I remember like you were like, Caleb, you have your sunglasses in your vest at or at Forest Hill. You want to take those out? I'm like, I do. I didn't think about that. So yeah, you guys just did great. But going across the river was good, and then across the river was a climb to Green Gate, and that's I think 1,000 feet or something like that. And at this point in the race, I was like I realized that I was good at running downhills and okay at running flats, but I had nothing going uphill. And normally I'm like, Andrew knows this, a very good power hiker. And I had none of my power hiking. Like it was like I don't know why. I don't know if it was like I went up Devil's Thumb too hard or something like that, but uphills were where I was way worse than people of my kind of cohort. And so starting up Green Gate was really rough, where it's just kind of a long climb. Yeah, so it was just like, all right, we're climbing up there. It probably was 5 hours, 6 hours until 24 or something like that. So I knew I had a really long amount of time to go. And we
Hey,
headed up there.
Caleb.
Yeah.
So I don't know if this is viewable, but in there is basically your ratio compared to the splits that you wanted. That was a 23-32. So you can see on those two yellow highlighted how you were blowing down those downhills.
Pull it
And then-
back just a little bit
Okay.
and a little bit up. Oh yeah, yeah. Yeah.
And I don't have it written on here because that's when we went to the Paultons, but Devil's Thumb, that that was a struggle with your stomach and everything. Your split to Devil's Thumb was at 101.1%. So it wasn't as slow as you thought. I mean, your tummy was trouble and everything, but compared to your peers and stuff, you were 1% slower in a time that you were in distress. So pretty good.
Good, but also like it was like 10 to 20 degrees cooler than average. So like I would have expected to be like exceptional there. But it is good to know. But I was just glad that eventually I made up enough time places. But yeah, I got to Green Gate, and and I kind of, even though I'd run that section before, I kind of forgot what was ahead. And so I started like kind of just like running a little bit afraid of what was to come on the climbs, even though that's a very runnable section. It was just sort of like I would see a climb, and on my watch, it would tell me how many climbs were remaining. And I'm like, I'm gonna climb 39 of 51. Okay. And it's like 90 feet, but I'm like looking at my watch to be like, is this climb gonna end? And but I ran. I started low coming out of Rucky Chucky because of that long climb up Green Gate. Melissa was doing a good job of motivating me, and I was trying to be just like receptive to it, but also like being just like, oh man, this is hard and long. And then I got to, at some point, eventually I got to mile 85, which is Auburn Lake Trails. And I got in there and I saw that I was like, they had signs at the aid stations. And I think at this point I saw that like I had been roughly 10 minutes ahead of what the sign said 24-hour pace was. And so 85, I felt like, okay, I have 15 miles to go, which is like now not such a large number. I started feeling like when I got to 20 miles to go, it was like a moderate number of miles to go, as opposed to like, I have 61 miles, you know, like, and so that was encouraging. And then when I got to 15 to go, mile 85, I was like, okay, like this is like now like it's possible. But I also got into that aid station and I was like, something in me was just sort of like afraid a little bit, where I was like, okay, I gotta lock this down. And so coming out of 85, I had some soup broth with rice, and that was great. I had a Morton gel with caffeine, and I think that was probably the key. And I just like I went really hard out of there, to the point where she easily caught back up, but there were a couple times where like I dropped Melissa a little bit. What do you have there? What are you showing, Daddy? Oh, I think you might be on mute. Yeah.
After Auburn Lake, where you talked about some struggles, that run to Quarry Road was blistering. You were 90% of predict, and then all of a sudden you hit that big uphill to Pointed Rocks. Do you see that percent? The bottom percent for you is measured against your projected finish. So you can
Oh,
just
wow.
see you started at like at 108% or 100 whatever, and then you kept going down, converging on that 23:32.
Wow.
But yeah, so
that matches what I was feeling, because like, yeah, I kind of got in this like odd, like little bit like a like racing mode, a little bit like an, aggressive mode, where I was just like, I'm gonna charge through here. And I was like, I feel good. And so I'm gonna like eat as much as I can on the run, and I was like, I felt like I really was passing a ton of people there, and I was going quick. And then I got into, because I also just knew that I had Pointed Rocks climb to go, and then I also had Roby Point climb to go. And I was just like, if there's anything in this world I don't want to be racing to hit 24 hours up the climb to Roby Point. That was like such a scary thought to me, because I just didn't have it in me, that I was like, I need to get after this now. And so that was like a really strong part. And overall, I was like pretty strong in that section, again, being able to run most of the downhills. So felt awesome about that. Just to be able to run at all past mile 80 is amazing. Yeah, you have a question?
Mom question here.
Yeah.
Sorry, is another person talking too? Or, oh, okay. I'm just wondering how you knew to drink those chicken broths and rice and things. Like, I've never heard of people having that on a run.
Yeah, it's kind of a thing in long distance races. I had it in my first 100K. I just couldn't eat any solid food past like about mile 40, but I knew I needed food. And I mostly relied on like a sports drink mix named Roctane, which they had at the aid stations, but it was this just like hibiscus berry flavor. And I think I had more than 5 liters of this. So like
Oh.
600 grams of carbs, you know, and more
Wow.
than 5 liters of it. And I just was so tired of
Love it.
hibiscus berry flavor.
Like that.
And so I was just like trying to find some other kind of like salty savory food that I could eat. And that
Did
was
they offer you that at the aid station or you had it with you somehow?
they offered it at the aid stations at night.
Okay.
So that was really great. And also getting into mile 90, I'm like getting a refill of Roctane and like some chicken broth from Scott Jurek, who's won the race won the race like 7 times, and Hal
Oh.
Corder, who's won the race like 4 times. They're out there at like 2 or 3 in the morning at mile 90 aid station, just like handing out chicken broth and all that. I was like, and I was like, I thought I saw Scott Jurek, and then I asked another aid station guy, I was like, is that Scott Jurek? And he's like, yep. So it's just cool. There's like a cool community around it.
That is so cool.
Yeah. So at that point, I like was excited by how much time I had banked, and I knew that there was a kind of climb coming up, and my milestones at this point were the highway, and then Pointed Rocks, and then No Hands Bridge, and the finish, Roby Point, and then the finish. So I start that moving out of that mile 98 station. The climb is really long. It's 1,000 feet at 90 miles. And so it was just slow going, and people started to pass me a bit, and I just didn't have any wheels for it, but I didn't stop. I just kind of kept on plodding forward. And then I made it to the road, which I knew was 1 milestone. And then I just had a little bit more to go to Pointed Rocks at mile 94, and I would see the crew again. And I told Melissa, I was like, at this point, I was pretty locked in. I was just kind of like, all right, like, I feel bad that the crew is here, but I might just not even get anything from them. I'm just going to go. And so I got in, saw them. It's always great to see them. I was motivating myself a little bit by getting to sit and massage my quads a little bit at the aid stations. But I did sit. I changed my shoes because it was a really tough descent coming out of there. And so I knew that if I fell, that was going to be the worst thing ever. So I changed into more dexterous shoes. And yeah, I just kind of made quick work out of it. I joked to Shepard that I was like, this is your last chance to be a trayer sergeant and kick me out, but he didn't need to. And so I charged out of there pretty quick. And then Melissa, for the section that was ahead, they call it like the luge track, she had a headlamp on, and then for like the next 6 miles she ran with another headlamp on her hand, and so she was like the Statue of Liberty running along with an extra headlamp to provide more light. So the next day she was holding something. It's like, why is my arm so tired? It's like she ran for all these miles with her hand up. So made it through there, made it to No Hands Bridge. So there's No Hands Bridge, and then that sort of starts the climb to Roby Point. It's pretty flat, the climb to start Roby Point. And so I ran the majority of that, knowing like run this section and then you walk on the steep stuff. Then by the time I got to the steep stuff, before long, I saw that there was 2/10 of a mile to the top of Roby Point, and I had a lot of time banked. At this point, my watch had run out of battery. So I was like asking Melissa like so frequently, like, Melissa, what is the time of day? So I was like, I didn't want to like just lose track of something. And at that point, like when I got across No Hands Bridge, really before that, I knew that I was going to finish the race much earlier. But No Hands Bridge, I was like pretty confident that I was going to go under 24. And then going up Roby Point, it still looked good. And then by the time I got to the top of Roby Point, then it was just really exciting. I saw everybody there, and I had a lot of time. I think I had 30 minutes or more than 30 minutes to get to the finish from Roby Point, and that's 1.3 miles remaining. And so just that was so much fun to see everybody, and like everybody's cheering, and then we all ran the remainder together. I had no competitive drive whatsoever. I like somebody was like coming up on me, and there's like, it's funny, there's like two crew caravans running, and I was like, I do not need to beat this person. She passed me. I I peed in the bushes before going into the stadium because I was like needed to go. And then I got to the turning the corner, and then you see like the lights of the track, and I was like, man, I'm really here. And then saw the track itself and got on there. And everybody's like running around still.
Is that the first moment that you said, it's really gonna happen? The lights on the track, or a mile back?
It was before that, like a mile back at least. But seeing the lights on the track was just sort of like an overwhelming level of just like it's done. Like I'm making it. And then it was super fun running along on the track. And then rounding the curve on the track coming towards the finish line, like seeing the finish line. That's when I did like cry a little bit of just like, there it is, like this is what I've been going for. And then I just ran on in, and it just felt great. And yeah, finished it, and that felt amazing, and having everybody around was so cool. I love that you guys all ran with me through there. I was telling Melissa that we should all run through the finish together, but yeah, it was awesome. So finished it up, and then and made friends with the president of Western States, Diana Fitzpatrick, during the training runs, and her husband. So they knew Melissa and I, and so she came over, and actually Tim, her husband, came over and was like, you did it. And then she came over and started just talking about the race. And so it was really fun. And when Diana was talking to me while I was sitting in the chair, I think you see it in like the video, like she was just like, I forget exactly what I was saying, but she was just like, you get it, you definitely get this race, you know. It was fun. Yeah, it just felt so good. I felt like weary, but not like finishing like a hard marathon or something where you're just like gassed, but like just more like, what in the world? And really since then, and like even beyond, it's just like finished the race, but it still just does not feel possible then or now to like, how does anyone go 100 miles? It's just so far.
Right.
Like so it was awesome. Yeah.
Yeah, how did you feel compared to like Pikes Peak Marathon?
I thought I was like great. And I was like feeling really fine, and I was like clearly not wanting to run or anything like that, and excited to sit down and everything, but I thought I was doing physically and mentally really well. And then I sat down, and it actually was cold. I think it was like a little below 50. Hi. Oh, that's Taylor. But so I sat down for a little while, or for a little bit, and then I started getting really cold. And then I was part of this like study on like kidneys and stuff. And so they had come over to me like shortly after finishing, like, hey, Caleb, like come over and get your study stuff done. Oh, I wanted to do that. And so after sitting for a while and being like, okay, I'm gonna go over there, I started like people investigated it. Ren and Sarah got me a tea, all nice things. But then I started like walking over there, and then I just realized like, whoa, I do not feel good. And I was like really lightheaded. And Paul, I remember he just like was walking with me and was like, oh, you doing okay? You need a chair? And I was like, I need a chair. And he like ran a circle, grabbed a chair and kept in the circle, and then like slid it beneath my legs because I was very much like passing out. And so they went over to the med tent, and like, do you have a wheelchair? And they brought me over with a wheelchair, and I don't know what you were thinking at the time, Paul, whether you were thinking like he needs a med 10 or whatever. I still was thinking like, this is how I'm going to get to the study. But
They did say with the wheelchair, they're like, if he sits in the wheelchair, he has to come to medical. And if he feels fine and can walk over to the study tent, that's fine, because they were next to each other. But you seemed quite content in the medical tent.
yeah. So like also my knee started hurting at probably mile 80 or 5 or so. So it was really hard for me to like stand up off of it. It was like a sharp pain. So that was hard. And then the passing out. So I eventually got to the med tent. I was just so cold. And so I was all snuggled under blankets and everything. And I fell asleep for maybe 20 minutes or something like that. And then they were like, okay, you ready to get up? You know, a shower was waiting for me, and that just sounded amazing, and like sleeping in a bed. But also I was like gonna try to do the study. And so 2 people, I forget who it was, really just like lifted me up on their shoulders, and I like got like 5 steps away, and I was just like, it just felt like I couldn't hear anything, and I was like so my head felt hot, and the doctors there were just basically saying like your body has just like shut off blood flow to your, or prioritize blood flow to your muscles for so long, and then after a race like this, your body finally says, oh, we can send blood back to the stomach again. So you become nauseous, and you become nauseous and can pass out like that. And so I went back to the bed, and they're like, well, put your legs up. So he put my legs up on like his medical bag, and I took another nap, probably only 3 minutes at this point. That felt really good. And so by the time I did that, I felt good enough to leave. And I didn't do the study there, but I did I did go back and take a shower and take a nap, and then I did the study later. But that's the grand old Western States. It was so amazing.
Did you find out anything about the study, like how you did?
The only thing that I got was blood pressure readings that were normal for me, and arterial stiffness that was in a very good range. So that's all I have at the moment. But
Oh, what is that?
What is Ren's comments on the race? It was do or die at the, whatever that point was with his stomach and things. But what other comments does Ren have?
Yeah, I mean, I thought that he was doing amazingly well, right? Like I've done this kind of stuff before, and I have seen it go south personally, and then I've also seen races go south with other people. And I fully expected at Michigan Bluff that he was going to have a really tough time. He turned it around, which amazed me, and then just watching him be so consistent with the splits was pretty phenomenal. But then I only saw you, I saw you, Caleb, at Forest Hill at mile 60 something, and then didn't see him again. And so like I went and slept. But like a lot of it felt like pretty relatable. Feeling like he was nauseous and going to pass out after he sat down at the finish line. That's like pretty normal stuff. So I wasn't particularly surprised by any of it. And knew that he would just need to sleep it off for a bit, and then he would get up and take a shower and feel better. So yeah, I mean, very impressed with how it went for him. Like a lot of grit and like really good pacing too. Like the pacing was very well done, that you didn't blow up. And seemed like a good timeout. I'm a little jealous that it only took him 24 hours because mine took 32 hours. But yeah, overall, I think he did very well.
I thought about Ren a lot during that, of just like, how did you not drop out when you have so much time remaining? 'Cause that was a big thing that I kept fighting during the run, was just like to not think about how much time there was to go. But it was really hard.
But
Ren, didn't you come here and run the Pikes Peak Marathon right after you had done that?
Oh
or-
no, these were separate years. So I did Pikes
Oh.
Peak two years ago, and then this long race was a year ago. So they were pretty separate events.
Okay, all right.
But Caleb's point about being I think you were saying it about mile like 80, 85 sort of Green Gate area that you knew you were going to finish. That sort of is a little bit how I felt, even though I was going very, very slowly and it was a lot of walking, a true war of attrition. You kind of know, you're like, okay, this is like actually going to finish. And so, yeah, I resonate with that.
If you had stopped and rested or something, might you have gotten into that medical tent mode before, like you should have? Like
Good point.
before you finished?
Yeah, maybe, probably. I hadn't thought about that before, but it could have been like a spiral if I sat in an aid station for too long.
Yeah. And then what about, how long was that boat ride?
Oh, it was like 40 seconds or something.
Oh, I was gonna say that would be so comfortable. You just might want to
I know.
stay.
I wanted it to go for longer. It was really pleasant.
It was funny at that aid station, Caleb was sort of like, I just want to sit for like a little bit longer. And Melissa was like, we're sitting in the boat, get up and go.
Good job, man.
It was great.
That girl is such a trooper.
She had the right mix of like supportive and giddy up and go. You know, it's
Mhm.
yeah, very, very delicate balance to strike.
Yeah, we were very grateful. I got to see a video of you and Melissa running down to the boat, and I was just so excited for that.
It was fun.
Like,
Unintentionally matching as well. It was great.
yeah.
That was my favorite part, that you both had the blue shirts on.
Yeah.
Team uniform.
But regarding Melissa and stuff like that, Cameron and I talked a day or two before the race as far as, you know, what your team was going to do there, what I was going to do with splits. And if one thing was supreme, it was trust Melissa. Cameron said she's run it with them. She's run splits with them. Her people skills are off the chart. She's going to know when to push them. And then she's going to know when to, you know, flatter them. She's the main thrust in
Great.
helping.
When to be the
Caleb.
Statue of Liberty holding a light above
Yeah.
your head.
Yeah, and then you too, Paul, like, I just couldn't believe, I was so grateful once I saw, okay, Paul's running with him now, it's gonna be fine, Melissa's running with him now. I just was so glad that you guys were there and able to do that with them.
It really helped.
Thank
I couldn't
you.
imagine running at night without somebody. Could have felt really alone.
Yeah, did everybody have pacers at that point or just you?
The vast majority at Western States do. It's just such a like highlight race that most people do, but other hundreds, not always. But some don't. It's impressive to see.
It also seemed to be, at least I was surprised by talking with other people, that a lot of people had never met their pacers before, that there's like a network of like people that are like, I will pace for someone at Western States, I'll pace and crew. And then they like meet up with someone from somewhere, which is kind of cool. So even people that don't necessarily like have people in their corner that can make it out there will have pacers, which is kind of cool.
That's really neat.
It is
Um,
cool, but man, it sure helped having people I knew there, not having to be like rando, stranger danger.
Chit-chatting on the way.
Yeah. I felt just very comfortable saying like I have to be quiet now, or I am feeling low right now, or
Yeah. Yeah.
well, this is great. Thanks everybody for, I mean, it really was huge for me, feeling boosted. And every time I'd go across a timing mat, I was like knowing that like you're checking in and excited for it, and it like is surprisingly, I mean, maybe not surprisingly even, but just so enormously boosting.
Yeah, Daddy was so fun. He was here and he was on those times and the percentages of how fast you were going compared to others.
Doing it from the Boltons.
Yeah, and he was doing it. We had to go to a graduation party, and while we were there, he was still doing it on his phone. And
That's great.
yeah, he was doing his job for sure.
Yeah. The max.
Yeah, and we saw you finish, like we didn't just see the video, we got up and there you were.
Fun. It was
Yeah.
awesome. I'm glad they have that coverage. That's really cool.
Yeah, it was amazing. We're so proud of you.
Thank you.
And I wore my shirt to work today.
Oh, I love
Thank
it.
you.
That's great.
And Daddy has started running his, ever since Sunday when you finished.
I
He
love
went
that.
off, he did his run and he's been running ever since.
That's amazing.
Yeah.
As both inspiration and then also like not inspiring because it's so extreme. There was a guy there who they announced the elites before the race, and the elite man who got the most amount of cheers was this guy named Gene Dykes, and he's 75 years old. He ran a 2-hour 54-minute marathon at age 70. And he was trying to be the oldest finisher of Western States, and he came into the checkpoint at mile 75, past the cutoff, so he didn't finish it, but so amazing.
Wow.
Did you see the 21-year-old that had autism?
He finished just a little ahead of me, right?
Mhm.
That's really cool.
Yeah.
That's fun.
Were there any big like emergencies or anything?
No, the whole race was just like kind of perfect. It was hard, but no foot problems, no overheating. I never threw up. I just got the chance to be like, see what it feels like to go 100 miles and see where that pushes your fitness more than it is like, oh, I just was hurt by my knee pain or my blisters hurt too much or anything like that. There's just nothing. It was just great. As good as could be.
Did it feel
Can we
like
see the belt?
It's inside. I'll grab it. It's a very fun one.
while you're going, Caleb? Did it feel like a lifetime in a day?
I hadn't thought about that before, and there were certainly like highs and lows, but I don't know if I would describe it that way. Of just feeling like it's just a very long day of running with some really high highs and some fairly low lows, but it was great. But it didn't so much feel like, I guess maybe it's a good thing that it didn't feel like a lifetime in a day, because it was like I didn't learn something new, or I didn't like master a skill or something like that. It's kind of more like I ran for a really long time. But
Maybe it only feels that way if you are slower than 24 hours.
there you go. Yeah, I didn't quite experience the whole day. Here's my very shiny belt buckle. Not fun.
Why is it not on a belt?
Yeah, I was gonna say, have
Um,
you worn it yet?
I tried to wear it while Shepard and Hudson were still here. Yeah, it's got my name engraved in it. 2023. Pretty cool. So they like are up all night engraving these to hand them out awards like a few hours later. It's amazing. Also, cool thing about the belt buckle, like the belt buckle, the race costs like $315 to enter, and the belt buckle costs like $365. They're like, these are like all handmade. They're all unique. It's like all that etching is done by hand. So they're all just like handmade, placing that cougar on it. Really cool. So next family picture, you're going to see me with a very large belt buckle.
Oh, I just love it. Oh.
So fun. All right. Well, I'm going to go jump and eat dinner, but thanks for everything. I mean, it's so fun, and also checking in here. It's fun to share.
Congrats, Caleb.
Thank you,
Yeah.
Ray.
Nicely done.
Everybody here. So fun.
And from Black Forest.
Thank you.
Oh,
All right.
best.
Love
Love
you
you.
all. Who's with you there, Montezuma?
Oh, Montezuma, why do you have that on there?
That was my clothing during the race. But it's Jack.
Oh, hi, Jack. I heard good stories about you from Hudson.
Hop in the picture so we can see it.
He's in mine.
Oh, okay.
Yeah.
Mostly in Jefferson.
Love you, Rachel.
Yeah, good to see you, sweetie.
All right. Bye, all.
And Daiso is so cute.
Oh,
She's been holding her down.
She's a lapdog.
Melissa was just amazing. I wish we could have her here so we could have told her how grateful we were.
yeah, she really was. All right.
Bye.
Bye.
Hi, guys.